The massive crystal building floated in space like a giant diamond. It spun slowly around the planet Kepler Prime, catching starlight and throwing rainbows across its surface. Inside this building, the most important meeting in the galaxy was about to begin. Commander Jake Morrison walked down a long hallway made of smooth white stone. His black uniform looked simple compared to the amazing technology around him. Behind him walked two other humans. Lisa Carter carried a tablet and wore the blue clothes of a diplomat. Captain Ryan Brooks stayed quiet, his green military uniform neat and clean. The hallway was huge. It could fit 10 humans standing on each other's shoulders. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, shifting and changing like living things. The air felt thick and warm, adjusted for dozens of different alien species. Jake stopped at a massive door that looked like flowing water frozen in time. The door sensed him and opened with a sound like wind chimes. The 3 humans stepped into the council chamber. The room took Jake's breath away. It was shaped like a giant bowl, with seats rising up on all sides. Each section was different, built for different types of alien bodies. Some seats floated in the air. Others were filled with glowing energy. Strange smells filled the air, some sweet, some sharp, some that made Jake's nose burn. The human section was tiny. 3 small chairs sat in the lowest part of the chamber, looking lost among the grand alien seating areas. Jake sat down first. The chair felt too small, like it was made for children. Lisa sat on his right, setting her tablet on her lap. Ryan took the left chair, his eyes scanning the room for exits and threats. Around them, aliens began to fill their seats. Jake had studied pictures of these species, but seeing them in person was different. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects, with wings that sparkled like broken glass. They made clicking sounds when they talked, their movements quick and sharp. The Drakmari were huge lizards that walked on 2 legs, their scales changing color with their moods. The Luminari were the strangest beings of pure light trapped in crystal containers shaped like bodies. More aliens entered. The Korthon looked like metal spiders with too many legs. The Villani were blue and moved like they were swimming through air. The Grex appeared to be living rocks with glowing cracks running through their bodies. Each species had technology that seemed like magic. 2 human eyes. Jake felt very small. The humans had worked for 50 years to reach this moment. 50 years since they invented faster-than-light travel. 50 years of exploring nearby star systems and making contact with alien civilizations. All leading to this day, when they would ask to join the Galactic Confederation. A sound like thunder filled the chamber. At the top of the room, a crystal formation began to glow. The Archon was taking his place. The Archon was the oldest and most powerful being in the galaxy, made of living crystal that had grown for millions of years. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once. "The council begins," the Archon said. "We decide on new membership applications. The humans have requested to join our confederation." Jake straightened in his chair. This was it. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next few hours. The Zephyrian stood up, his wings catching the light. "Honored Archon, we must speak against this application." His voice was like music, but Jake could hear the contempt in it. "The humans are barely civilized. They only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago. Most of us mastered this technology before their species could even make fire." Laughter rippled through the chamber. It's not kind laughter, but the cruel sound of beings who thought they were better than others. Jake's face turned red, but he forced himself to stay quiet. A Drakmari female rose next, her scales flashing orange with anger. "These creatures still fight wars on their home planet. Even now, as we speak, humans kill other humans over resources and territory. How can such violent beings join our peaceful confederation?" More voices joined in. The Villani delegate spoke in a voice like flowing water. "Their planet is dying from pollution they created themselves. They poison their air and water, then wonder why their world grows sick. They cannot manage one planet properly." Korthon clicked his metal legs together. "We have watched their behavior for decades. They show greed, hatred, and stupidity. They make the same mistakes over and over again. They learn nothing from their history." The attacks continued for hours. Each alien species found new ways to insult humanity. They mocked human technology, calling it primitive and dangerous. They laughed at human culture, saying it was violent and backwards. They criticized human biology, saying humans were weak, and lived too short a time to gain wisdom. The Luminari representative pulsed with cold light. We have studied their entire history through quantum scanning. War after war. Genocide, slavery, environmental destruction, religious conflicts are a failed species that somehow survived longer than they should have. Lisa Carter took notes, her pen moving quickly across her tablet. Jake watched her hand shake slightly. He knew this was hard for her to hear. She had spent years studying these alien cultures, learning their languages and customs. She had hoped for a better reception. Ryan Brooks sat like a statue, his face showing nothing. Jake could see his friend's jaw muscles working. Ryan had fought in the resource wars on Earth. He had seen the worst of humanity, but also the best. Jake knew these insults hurt him deeply. A Grex elder spoke, his rocky voice grinding like stones. Perhaps in 1,000 years, when they have evolved beyond their animal nature, we might consider them again. But today, no, they are not ready for the responsibilities of Confederation membership. The Zephyrion ambassador spread his wings wide. I propose we reject their application immediately. There is no point in wasting more time on this discussion. The humans are too primitive, too violent, too short-sighted to join our advanced civilizations. The chamber filled with agreement sounds, clicking, humming, flashing lights, and color changes all showed that most aliens agreed. The humans should be rejected. Jake felt anger building in his chest. Part of him wanted to stand up and shout at these arrogant aliens. Part of him wanted to tell them about human achievements they were ignoring. But he stayed seated, knowing that an emotional outburst would only prove their point about human primitiveness. The Archon's voice boomed through the chamber. Are there any who speak in favor of human membership? Silence. Complete, total silence. Not one alien voice rose to defend humanity. Jake felt his heart sink. 3 humans, alone among hundreds of advanced beings, all of whom had already decided that humanity was not worthy. Very well, the Archon said. We shall now vote on the human application for membership in the Galactic Confederation. Jake closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. 50 years of human dreams were about to die in this crystal chamber, destroyed by alien prejudice and superiority. He thought about all the people on Earth who were waiting for news of the hopes and plans that would turn to dust. The vote began, and Jake Morrison prepared to watch humanity's future crumble around him. The vote moved around the chamber like a wave of rejection. Each alien species cast their decision with lights, sounds, or gestures that Jake Morrison had learned to recognize. Red lights meant no. Harsh buzzing sounds meant no. Closed wings and turned backs meant no. One by one, every alien civilization rejected humanity's application. The Zephyrians flashed their wings in a pattern that meant complete dismissal. The Dracomari turned their backs to the human section, their scales shifting to the dark colors of contempt. The Luminari dimmed their light until they were barely visible, showing their disgust. Jake felt each rejection like a physical blow. Behind him, Lisa Carter had stopped taking notes. Her pen lay still on her tablet. Ryan Brooks sat perfectly straight, but Jake could see the tension in his friend's shoulders. The chamber filled with satisfied murmurs as the vote continued. The aliens seemed pleased with themselves, as if rejecting humanity was a noble act that protected the galaxy from contamination. Some species made comments to each other in their own languages. Jake caught enough words to know they were joking about human stupidity. Finally, the Archon spoke again. The vote is complete. Humanity's application for Confederation membership is rejected by unanimous decision. The words hit Jake like ice water. Unanimous. Not even one alien species had voted in favor of humanity. Not one voice had spoken up for them. They were completely alone. However, the Archon continued, and Jake felt a tiny spark of hope. Confederation. Law allows for one final appeal. The rejected species may address this council one last time before the decision becomes permanent. Jake's mind raced. This was their last chance. One speech to change the minds of hundreds of alien beings who had already decided humanity was worthless. One chance to save 50 years of human dreams and plans. He looked at Lisa Carter. She was their best speaker, trained in alien languages and diplomatic protocol. She knew exactly what to say to appeal to each species. She was the obvious choice to make this final speech. Lisa met his eyes and nodded slightly. She understood. This was what she had trained for her entire career. She started to rise from her chair. "I'll speak for humanity," said a quiet voice. Jake turned in surprise. Ryan Brooks was standing up, his hand resting on the back of his chair. The captain looked calm, but Jake could see something burning in his friend's eyes. "Ryan, no, Lisa," whispered, "I should do this. I know their customs, their languages. You're military, not diplomatic." Ryan looked at her with a small smile. Sometimes the truth works better than diplomacy. The chamber had gone quiet. The aliens were watching this exchange between the humans with amusement. They probably expected the humans to argue among themselves, proving once again that they were too primitive to work together. Jake made a decision. He nodded to Ryan. "Do it." Lisa started to protest, but Jake put his hand on her arm. Something in Ryan's expression told him this was right. Maybe what humanity needed wasn't careful diplomacy. Maybe what they needed was honesty. Ryan walked down the few steps to the center of the chamber floor. He looked very small, standing alone in the middle of the huge room. Around him, hundreds of alien beings sat in their special seats, looking down at him like judges deciding the fate of a criminal. The Zephyrian ambassador tapped his claws on his chair arm. "Let the human barbarian speak quickly, so we can end this embarrassment." Several aliens made sounds that Jake recognized as laughter. They found this amusing. Primitive human soldier trying to change their minds with words. It was entertainment. For them, Ryan stood quietly for a moment, looking up at the aliens surrounding him. He turned slowly, making eye contact with different species. His movements were controlled and careful, like a soldier preparing for battle. "You want to know about humans?" Ryan began. His voice was steady and clear, carrying easily through the chamber. "You've spent the last few hours telling us what we are. You've called us primitive, violent, and destructive. You've laughed at our wars, our struggles, and our failures." The chamber stayed quiet, but Jake could feel the attention focusing on Ryan. The aliens expected anger or pleading. Instead, they were hearing something else. "But there's something you haven't asked," Ryan continued, walking slowly around the center area. "You haven't asked why we're here. Why a species as primitive as humanity managed to develop faster than light travel, explore dozens of star systems, and stand before this council asking for membership." A Drakmari delegate shifted in his seat. Something in the human's tone was different from what they expected. This wasn't desperation or rage. This was something else. Ryan stopped walking and faced the Zephyrian section. "You call us violent. Yes, we fight. We've had wars for thousands of years. But do you know what those wars taught us?" The Zephyrian ambassador's wings fluttered slightly. "Violence teaches nothing but more violence." "Wrong," Ryan said simply. "War taught us to adapt. Every conflict forced us to think differently, to solve problems in new ways, to never give up when everything seemed hopeless. Every war pushed us to develop new technologies, new strategies, new ways of working together." He turned to face the Luminari section. "You beings of pure energy, you've never known physical hardship, you've never had to struggle for resources, or choose between survival and principles. We humans learned cooperation not from philosophy books, but because we had to. We learned to work together because the alternative was death." The Luminar representative pulsed with cooler light. Jake could tell Ryan's words were having some effect, even if the aliens didn't want to admit it. "You call us primitive," Ryan said, addressing the entire chamber now. "But let me ask you something. What happens when your advanced systems fail? 3 years ago, solar flares disrupted the Zephyrian quantum communication network. Your entire civilization nearly collapsed into chaos in less than a week. The Zephyrian ambassador's wings went completely still. That information was supposed to be classified. You had no backup systems, Ryan continued. No emergency plans. No way to function without your perfect technology. Because you've never needed to learn how to survive when things go wrong. Murmurs started spreading through the chamber. Some aliens were surprised that a human knew about the Zephyrian crisis. Others were beginning to realize that this soldier knew more than he was supposed to. Ryan faced the Drakmari section. You call us destructive because we've damaged our planet. Yes, we have. But we're also the only species in this galaxy that has successfully reversed planetary environmental collapse. It's not once, but twice. The reptilian delegate's crest flattened. Against his head? That's impossible. Quantum records show no such achievements. The records you have access to, Ryan said with a slight smile. But there are things happening in this galaxy that your Confederation doesn't know about. Things that your advanced civilizations haven't noticed because you're too busy looking down on primitive species like us. Jake felt his heart starting to beat faster. What was Ryan talking about? What things was he referring to? The Archon's crystal form began pulsing with deeper colors. Human, you speak of events unknown to this council. Explain yourself. Ryan looked up at the massive crystalline. Being, you want to know why humanity developed space travel so fast? Why we've been pushing so hard for Confederation membership? Why we've been exploring the Outer Rim systems that your people considered too dangerous to visit? The chamber had gone. Completely silent now. Damned. Even the background hums and energy flows seemed quieter. Every alien eye, sensor, and attention device was focused on the single human standing in the center of the room. Because, Ryan said quietly, there's something coming. Something your advanced sensors haven't detected yet. Something that's going to change everything. He paused, letting the words sink in. And if this Confederation doesn't start taking humanity seriously, you're all going to die. The silence in the chamber was so complete that Jake Morrison could hear his own heartbeat. Every alien in the room stared at Ryan Brooks, who stood calmly in the center of the floor like he had just announced the weather instead of threatening. An entire galactic civilization. The Archon's crystal form pulsed with angry red light. Human, you dare threaten this council. Speak of death to beings who have lived for thousands of years? Ryan shook his head slowly. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm telling you the truth. There's a difference. A Drakmari general stood up, his scales flashing bright orange with rage. This is exactly what we expected from your violent species. When you cannot win with words, you try to frighten us with stories of danger. Stories? Ryan asked. He reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a small data device. Let me tell you about some recent events that your intelligence networks seem to have missed. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Clicking, hissing, buzzing, and flashing lights showed that the aliens were offended by Ryan's calm confidence. How dare this primitive human suggest that their advanced civilizations had missed something important? Ow. The Zephyrian ambassador spread, his wings wide in a gesture of dominance.
Human.
Your species has been in space for 50 years. We have been exploring the galaxy for millennia. What could you possibly know that we do not? Ryan looked up at the insect-like being with steady eyes. 5 years ago, your deep space monitoring stations detected something they called the Andromeda signal. A transmission from our neighboring galaxy warning about something called the Void Swarm. The chamber went quiet again. The Andromeda signal was classified information, known only to the highest levels of Confederation government. How did a human military officer know about it? The Archon's voice dropped to a threatening rumble. That information is restricted to council members only. How do you know of it? Because Ryan said simply, we've been dealing with the consequences while you've been having committee meetings about it. He activated his data device. A holographic display appeared above his hand, showing star charts that Jake had never seen before. The display showed the outer edge of the galaxy far beyond the normal Confederation space. Your scientists calculated that the Void Swarm would reach our galaxy in about 50 years, Ryan continued. They predicted we had time to prepare. Time to study the threat, time to develop defenses. The display zoomed in on a section of space that looked empty to Jake's untrained eyes. but Ryan touched a control and the view changed. Suddenly, dark shapes appeared in the starfield, moving between the distant suns like shadows given form. They were wrong, Ryan said quietly. The Void Swarm didn't wait 50 years. They found a way through 3 years ago. Gasps and shocked sounds filled the chamber. Several aliens began talking at once, but the Archon's booming voice silenced them. Possible, the crystal being declared. Our monitoring systems would have detected any extragalactic intrusion. Ryan nodded.
That's your...
Monitoring systems are very good at detecting normal space travel, energy signatures, and quantum communications. But the Void Swarm doesn't use technology like ours. They don't travel through space the way we do. The holographic display changed again, showing what looked like tears in space itself. Dark rifts that seemed to hurt Jake's eyes to look at directly. Come through dimensional tears, Ryan explained. Rips in reality that your sensors can't detect because they're not really in our dimension. The first rift opened in the outer rim near the human colony at New Geneva. Lisa Carter gasped behind Jake. New Geneva was where her brother had been stationed as a colonial administrator. Jake remembered the reports of lost contact with the colony, but the official explanation had been equipment failure. What happened to New Geneva? The Luminari representative asked, their crystal form pulsing with nervous energy. Ryan's face grew hard. Gone. The entire colony. 40,000 people. Consumed by creatures that exist partially outside our reality. We lost contact on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, there was nothing left but empty space where a planet used to be. The chamber filled with horrified murmurs. Jake felt sick to his stomach. 40,000 people, including Lisa's brother, dead while the Confederation debated trade, agreements and cultural exchanges. You're lying. A Corthon delegate clicked angrily. Our gravitational sensors would detect the destruction of an entire planet. Ryan looked at the metal spider-like being with tired eyes. Check your records. Check the gravitational readings from the New Geneva system from 3 years ago. You'll find a gap in your data. A period of 47 hours where your sensors detected nothing at all from that location. The Corthon's metal legs tapped nervously. Jake could see that the alien was already accessing data through his technological implants. The gap exists, the Corthon admitted reluctantly. But sensor failures are not uncommon in remote systems. One system might be a failure, Ryan agreed. But what about Titan's Rest? What about the mining stations at Kepler 7? What about the research outpost at Vega Minor? With each name, the holographic display showed another empty spot in space where human colonies used to exist. Jake counted 7 missing worlds, 7 places where hundreds of thousands of humans had simply vanished. We've been fighting this enemy for 3 years, Ryan continued. Not with committees or studies or diplomatic discussions. It's with ships and weapons and lives. We've been holding the line at the Proxima defense grid, trying to keep the Void Swarm from breaking through to Confederation space. The Archon's crystal form had gone dark, showing deep thought. If this is true, why did humanity not inform the Confederation immediately? Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. We tried. We sent distress signals, emergency communications, requests for military assistance. Do you know what we got back? He touched his data device again. A series of official Confederation responses appeared in the holographic display, written in the formal language of galactic bureaucracy. Form 7743B. Request for military assistance denied due to insufficient documentation. Ryan, read aloud. Form 8821C. Emergency status not recognized due to lack of verified threat assessment. Form 9955A. Distress signal classification downgraded to routine maintenance request. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The bureaucratic responses sounded exactly like the kind of paperwork the Confederation was famous for. You want to know why humans seem so desperate to join your Confederation? Ryan asked, looking around the chamber. It's not because we need your approval or your technology. It's because in 18 months, the Void Swarm is going to finish consuming the Outer Rim colonies and start moving toward the core worlds. He deactivated the holographic display and put the device back in his pocket. And when that happens, Your advanced civilizations are going to face an enemy that doesn't care about your beautiful technology, your ancient wisdom, or your peaceful philosophies. Ryan started walking slowly around the center of the chamber, again, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. The void swarm consumes everything. Energy, matter, even space itself. They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They don't want territory or resources. They just want to feed. He stopped in front of the human section, looking up at Jake and Lisa. We've lost 60% of our deep space fleet fighting them. Entire human worlds have sacrificed themselves to slow the enemy advance and buy time for evacuations. Ryan turned back to face the assembled aliens. So yes, we're primitive. Yes, we're violent. Yes, we make mistakes. But we're also the only species in this galaxy that has looked the void swarm in the face and refused to run away. The chamber remained silent as Ryan's words sank in. Jake could see the aliens processing this information, trying to decide if they believed the humans' incredible claims. Every day, Ryan said quietly, human ships engage an enemy that your best computer models would probably say cannot be defeated. We're not just fighting for human survival, we're fighting for every living being in this galaxy. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a second data device. This contains everything we know about void swarm tactics, technology, and weaknesses. 3 years of hard-won intelligence bought with human blood. Ryan set the device on. The floor in front of him. You can reject our membership application if you want. You can keep calling us primitive barbarians. But in 18 months, when the darkness reaches your worlds, you'll understand what human savagery really means. His voice grew stronger. It means we don't surrender. It means we don't give up. It means we fight until our last breath for people who think we're not even worth basic respect. Ryan Brooks turned to walk back to his seat, leaving the data device on the crystal floor. The small black object seemed to glow under the chamber's lights, containing secrets that could save or doom an entire galaxy. The silence stretched on. For what felt like hours, Jake Morrison watched the alien faces around him, trying to read their expressions. Some looked shocked. Others appeared angry. A few seemed to be thinking hard about what they had just heard. The Korthon delegate was the first to speak, his metal legs clicking rapidly as he accessed his internal computers. The gravitational data confirms gaps in our sensor records. 7 systems show the same pattern of complete sensor blackout followed by empty space. A Villani scientist floated higher in her chair, her blue skin rippling with concern. Void swarm creatures exist outside normal space-time. It would explain why our deep space monitors failed to detect them. The Zephyrian ambassador folded his glittering wings tightly against his body. This is impossible. No species could fight such an enemy for 3 years without Confederation support. No advanced species could, Ryan said without turning around. But humans aren't advanced. We're stubborn. He finally reached his chair and sat down next to Jake and Lisa. Jake could see exhaustion in his friend's face. The weight of 3 years of secret war was written in the lines around Ryan's eyes. The Archon's crystal form pulsed with deep purple light, indicating serious thought. Human Brooks, your claims require verification. We cannot base Confederation policy on the word of one being. Before Ryan could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls and automated voices spoke. In dozens of alien languages, Jake caught enough words to understand that emergency signals were coming in from multiple sources. A technician rushed into the chamber, moving so fast that Jake couldn't tell what species it belonged to. The being whispered something to the Archon. In a language that sounded like breaking glass, the Archon's form went completely white, then began cycling through colors Jake had never seen before. Emergency communication from the Outer Rim Defense Network. All stations report massive sensor anomalies. Multiple colony worlds have stopped responding to standard communications. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens began talking at once in their native languages. Some stood up and moved toward the exits. Others activated communication devices, trying to contact their homeworlds. The Drakmari general's scales flashed bright red. Coincidence? These events cannot be related to the human story. Check the timeline, Ryan said calmly over the noise. Compare the communication blackouts to the locations I showed you. See if they match. More technicians rushed into the chamber carrying data, tablets, and emergency reports. The Archon's form grew brighter as he processed multiple information streams at once. "The pattern matches," the Archon announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. 7 worlds have gone silent in the past 48 hours, all in the sectors identified by the human data. A Luminary representative pulsed with panicked light. "How is this possible? Our early warning systems should have detected any threat weeks in advance." "Your early warning systems look for normal threats," Ryan explained. "Energy signatures, mass movements, electromagnetic radiation. The void swarm doesn't register on those sensors because they're not completely in our reality." The Zephyrian ambassador's wings trembled. "If what you say is true, how do we fight such an enemy?" Ryan stood up and walked back to the center of the chamber. He picked up the data device he had left on the floor. "This contains 3 years of tactical analysis, battle reports from engagements with void swarm forces, technical specifications of weapons that can actually hurt them." He held up the device so every alien could see it. "Human engineers discovered that quantum resonance. Weapons can disrupt their dimensional phase shifts. Our tacticians learned that concentrated plasma fire can force them back into normal space where conventional weapons work." The device projected new holograms showing detailed battle diagrams. Jake saw human ships engaged in desperate fights against creatures that looked like living darkness with too many teeth. "We've lost thousands of ships learning how to fight them," Ryan continued. "But we've also won battles. We've saved colony worlds. We've pushed them back when everyone said it was impossible." A Grex elder spoke, his rocky voice grinding like an avalanche. "Why should we believe that primitive human weapons succeeded where our advanced technology would fail?" Ryan smiled grimly. "Because your advanced technology is designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions. Human technology is designed to work when everything goes wrong." He touched a control, and the hologram showed a human battleship that looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Hull plates were missing, weapon turrets were destroyed, and entire sections of the ship were held together with what looked like metal tape. "This is the battleship Liberty after the Battle of Titan's Rest," Ryan explained. 90% of her systems were offline. Her main weapons were destroyed. Her life support was failing. But she kept fighting for 6 hours and saved 40,000 civilian refugees. The hologram changed to show the ship's interior. Jake could see human crew members working in damaged corridors. Some wearing patched spacesuits, others using hand tools to repair critical systems. "Your ships would have retreated to safety for proper repairs," Ryan said. "Human ships keep fighting with duct tape and determination until the job is done." The chamber had grown quiet again as the aliens studied the battle footage. Jake could see them beginning to understand what human stubbornness really meant in practical terms. The Archon's voice filled the room. "If humanity has been fighting this war alone, what do you require from the Confederation?" "Not much," Ryan said. "We don't need you to fight our battles. We need you to coordinate your defenses with ours. Share sensor data so we can track void swarm movements. To provide safe harbor for refugee populations when worlds fall." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Most importantly, we need you to stop treating this like a political problem. The Void Swarm doesn't care about Confederation, law, or diplomatic immunity. When they reach core space, they'll consume Zephyrian hive worlds and Drakmari colonies equally." A new alarm began sounding, this one even louder than the first. Another technician rushed in, this one clearly panicked. The being spoke rapidly. To the Archon in a language that sounded like screaming wind, the Archon's form went completely black for a moment, then blazed with white light. "Long-range sensors have detected massive dimensional disturbances heading toward Confederation space. Estimated arrival time, 18 months. The chamber fell silent as the weight of Ryan's words hit home. Everything he had predicted was coming, true in real time. "Emergency vote," the Archon declared, his voice booming with authority. "All in favor of immediate Confederation membership for humanity. With full military cooperation and resource-sharing privileges, the vote was instant and unanimous. Every alien species that had spent hours mocking humanity now voted to accept." Them red lights changed to green. Harsh buzzing became melodic chimes. Closed wings opened in gestures of welcome. But Jake noticed that the acceptance came not from respect but from fear. The aliens weren't voting for humanity because they had changed their minds about human worth. Were voting because they needed human experience and stubbornness to survive. Ryan. Brooks walked back to his seat as alarms continued sounding. Throughout the station, emergency meetings were being called. Military commanders were being summoned. The greatest alliance in galactic history was forming out of desperation and necessity. As Ryan sat down, he looked at Jake and Lisa with tired
eyes.
"Well, we got what we came for, did we?" Lisa asked quietly. "They still think we're primitive barbarians. They just need our help now." Ryan shrugged. "Sometimes being needed is better than being respected. Respect can be earned later." 8. Looked around the chamber as alien delegates rushed to contact their governments and military forces. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as the weakest member of a peaceful confederation, but as the experienced warriors who could teach others how to fight an impossible enemy. The irony wasn't lost on him. All the qualities that had made aliens reject humanity, violence, stubbornness, and the ability to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless, were exactly the qualities that would save the galaxy. As the chamber emptied and emergency protocols activated throughout the station, Jake Morrison realized that humanity's greatest weakness had become their greatest strength. They were no longer the primitives begging for acceptance. They were the veterans teaching survival to civilizations that had never known real war. The mocking had stopped. Now the real work could begin.